Welcome to another episode of Technically Speaking.
Yeah.
We spent some time on the world of artificial intelligence, which is my favorite two letters, A and I. So one of the things that we've sort of been dancing around, Mark, that I'd love you to dig into is this whole world of LLMs or large language models. Tell me, oh sage of Campbellness, what is a large language model and why do I care?
Well, that's a good question. So people are probably most familiar with ChatGPT, been in all the news. But large language models, LLM, are these foundational models. They're neural networks that have been trained. There's a bunch of them out there right now. Probably the most common ones out there are ones like ChatGPT, Anthropic, Cohere. So there's a bunch of them out there. But basically, you have like a pre-trained model that knows stuff, like you fed it all the information on the internet, or you fed it all of the tweets on Twitter. And then there's fine tuning. Hey, let's make this for plumbers only, right? Let's take and fine tune it with the expertise of real live living, breathing plumbers. An example of that, the fine tune might be something like GitHub's Copilot, right? It's really, really good at coding. But there's some challenges with LLMs. One is accuracy. You've heard about hallucinations where an LM will just make up stuff that answers the prompt, but it may or may not actually be factual. There's also the susceptibility to data poisoning. We said that we've trained on this great corpus of knowledge. What if someone was in there monkeying with it? What if they got rid of any reference to Canadian hockey players, right?
There's only one Canadian hockey player that we should ever talk about, Mark, and it's the one who played for the LA Kings.
So our obligatory reference to the great Wayne Gretzky.
Why do people call him a GOAT? He was a hockey player, for crying out loud.
Well, just like our talk about Wayne Gretzky being the GOAT, well, that's our opinion. That might reveal a bias, and it turns out that LLMs are very good at amplifying bias.
Yep.
That is not always a good thing. As you probably heard, LLMs consume a huge amount of compute storage.
Yep.
They require large infrastructure. It's going to be a long time before we have a full-blown LLM sitting on your phone. That's the first L, right? That large part of it. So that's kind of a hindrance right now. Also, getting enough data to train the models. There's some companies now with huge bodies of information are realizing, holy cow, that's actually quite valuable. If they don't already have the big data sets to train their models on, it's getting increasingly difficult to actually get your hands on those. And another thing LLMs are not good at is real-time learning. They do quite well with what's called session learning. So if I bring up ChatGPT and say, hey, what's the quickest way to get to Toronto? It'll probably come up with a good answer for that. And if I say, what's a good restaurant there? It knows there replies to Toronto. That's great. But then if I log off and I come back hours later and I say, well, is there a hockey game that night? It's not necessarily going to know that I'm talking about Toronto and that the team is the Leafs. By the way, little linguistic side here, it's Leafs with an F. It is a plural with an F. Leafs. It's not leaves, by the way, for anyone out there. This is my job as a hockey ambassador to kind of make that correction in the language.